I read all of it? I'm just gonna read it. Alright. Hello. My name is Omar Zaghouani. Hey! That's not how you say it. It's spelled properly though. You're watching weird music on the glumburger channel. Today we are reviewing Cheval De Frise! My Cheval De Frise! Oh, I'm drooling.
Hello there, and welcome to Weird Music on the Glumburger channel. This is, of course, a show where we look at a different album pretty much every single week, right? Dive into it by discussing whatever it is I think about said album, you know? To be fair, what I quite like about, creating the show is that it's a great way of introducing you, yes, you, hello you, the viewer, to music that you might not have heard of before, and give you a rundown of my experience of it, and then hopefully hear what your experience was if you decide to listen to it, maybe. So, in today's episode, we're going to France with a look at an incredibly weird math rock album. So, I'll say here, my experience and understanding of math rock is incredibly rudimentary. And I would say a more expert opinion would be to ask literally anybody else who's in the band I play for, as they're the ones who really adore the genre. I do enjoy math rock, there's a bunch of albums that I really adore from the genre, but so much of what's really happening goes over my head a lot. The one we're discussing today, though, is one that was introduced to me by one fellow band member, and is generally a really weird mind melter of just, what's happening here? Why is everything over there when it should be over here? Kind of thing. Oh, it's going to be an odd one. This is going to be a really weird review, basically. Let's dive into it. I present the incredibly weird Cheval De Frise with a look at their debut album, Cheval De Frise. This is going to be a weird ride-up, no doubt. Let's just ask ourselves the question then. Who are Cheval De Frise? Well, Cheval De Frise are an instrumental, quirky avant math rock band from Bordeaux, France, comprised of Vincent Beysselance on drums and Thomas Bonvalet on electro-acoustic guitar. And having operated since 1998, Cheval De Frise have released an incredibly small number of releases. 2 studio albums, 2 other releases, and then that was it. That is only stuff they released. And their debut album that we're looking at today was their first release in the year 2000 on Sonore Records. And so what makes Cheval De Frise interesting in the math rock world, essentially, is their incredibly unusual approach to the genre, I would say, tending to instead embellish the sort of wacky nature of the genre and explore whatever avenues they see fit with their weird, time signatures and playing styles and things like that. I have to say, though, there's an incredible creative chemistry between the two musicians that really makes their music just so exciting to listen to, though for someone like me, it's all incredibly confusing and almost delirious at times. But let's just talk about the album, shall we? So, self-titled Cheval De Frise opens up with Connexion monstre entre un objet et son image, which I believe roughly translates to monstrous connection between an object and its image. I'll say here as well, I'm probably going to butcher a lot of the French sayings for this, but it's probably going to be a bit funny, right? Anyway, I think this is a brilliant album opener. You're sort of getting the electro-acoustic strings introducing the entire thing in this weird frenzy before the drums start the momentum going. And the whole thing enters this weird array of unusual time signatures and unusual drum patterns. And it's so angular and weird, but there's something really engrossing about it. The way I've always described this, and to be fair, math rock in general, it's like you've got the beat being established by the drums, the tempo, the pacing, etc., playing whatever time signature they want to, which is always shifting and changing. And then somehow the guitars play this absurd assortment of, notes plucked out of the instrument that are placed in all of the wrong parts of the composition, it feels. And yet, because it's math rock, it works somehow. It always works, which is really weird. It becomes, almost a nauseating experience, but the constantly shifting nature of the composition just makes it incredibly exciting to listen to. And of course, there's a really wonderful groove being achieved by the musicians on this composition, which makes it very delightful. And I really enjoy when the guitar becomes distorted and frenzy, sounding really incredibly chunky and loud. But to be fair, there's no way of predicting anything that's going to be happening in any of these compositions. The only thing you can do is strap yourself in and hope to hell that everything will be fine as you set off on the constantly shifting 40-minute musical odyssey. Let's talk about the next track then. Track 2, Noblesse de l'être, 1, don't know how that's said, or Nobility of Failure apparently. And this is an incredibly short little track, but it's another incredibly groovy one that sort of delights in its own peculiar oddities, I would say. The guitar moves in these stuttering repetitions to these peculiar licks and back and forth again, creating another constantly evolving composition, supported so much by the drums that somehow manages to keep up with the absurdly manic and unusual tempos. I genuinely find it to be a head-scratcher of a thing to listen to, but once again, oddly delightful, and there's something so interesting about just everything that's happening, even though I struggle to understand it, if that makes sense. Anyway, track 3, Constructions d'en écorces d'arbres, don't know, or tree bark constructions, who knows, maybe. This one opens up with a lovely medley of assorted notes in the guitar before the drums signal a change, and then both musicians start their weird interplay between their instruments once more. And there's another sort of furious tempo to this one, and I love how the guitar becomes really confusing in this one. It plays such an assortment of notes from all over the guitar essentially that it becomes impossible to work out how it could even be played, I think. Now, to be fair, I'm sure some people could work it out. Some people could figure out what's going on here. But to be fair, as confusing and weird as it is, this is how it's literally been played. This is the sound that they're producing from the instruments and stuff. And there's something amazing about that, to be fair. It's all very weird. But I'll say here, I genuinely think this review is not going to make any sense, but I'm going to try because I think it'll just be funny anyway. Track 4, Langue Haste, or Hasted Language. This one has a really weird vibe to it though. I like this one though. What I like on this is the guitar. It feels like it's trying its best to push everything along with this weird strum of what I assume is chord shapes maybe? Who knows? Of course, this feeling is completely negated when the entire composition changes and you just get a flurry of drumming over this fuzzy electric guitar sound. And I'm fond of that part though. Fond of the part actually where the drums just thump away unusually towards the end, backed up by a stab on the guitar, which then all fades out into this weird silence. I find there to be something really satisfying about it, and it's a very cool track as a result. Track 5, Lundi de Mars, or Monday, March 2nd. Or 2 even. I don't know. This one has a very peculiar jazzy opening of tapped cymbals as the guitar plays this really whimsical riff, to be fair. And what amuses me is that when the drums enter the scene, the song becomes even harder to follow, and it becomes almost an overloaded musical stimulus the more it progresses. And when the fuzz enters the scene on this one, once again, it's really satisfying and cool. But it's still such a wholly confusing experience, especially when the drums tap away so furiously as the guitar just simply does its own thing irrespective of what is happening. Such a bombardment of tempos, time signatures, peculiar notes and the likes that it's so difficult to comprehend, but easy to enjoy if that makes sense. Let's move on to track 6 then. Un point et des noirs limonaires. I really don't know how to say any of these French. You know what, I'll stay here actually. I failed French in secondary school. I had to do an oral French exam and got 0 out of 10 somehow, which really, nobody can figure out how that was. Maybe it was an autism thing, who knows. Anyway, this track roughly translates to A Bridge and Silty Black Waters, which I think is a cool name actually. So this one has a very amusing start where the drums open up, but once the guitar enters the scene, it's like the drums are only playing on these offbeats, which is really confusing because how does a song start on an offbeat? That doesn't make sense. It really twists my brain trying to figure that out. Maybe it just sounds like that though, maybe I'm completely wrong. I don't know, don't understand. Of course, the composition does the typical thing of changing, morphing and shifting in many ways, playing these groovy moments, offsetting it with manic flurries and quieter moments. And I have to say, as mind-boggling as I find this one, I think this might be a favourite of mine on the album. There's just something so interesting about the drums on this one that just sounds so weird, so not normal, I guess, but so brilliant in their own right, It feels like throughout most of this one, the drums sort of returning to this particular motif, playing this sort of similar pattern. I might be completely wrong. And it's like the guitar is playing something different over the top of it each and every time, which I think is really cool, but I might be completely wrong. I might just be so overloaded that it's just unable to, understand it. Right, hello there, future glumburger here, because past glumburger finally got so overloaded by an album that they completely forgot to talk about a song and skipped over it entirely. How on earth did this happen? Future glumburger here to tell you about track 7, Inclined en Chenou, or Inclined en Hooray? I don't even know how to say this. And also, I don't even know where to begin with this one, right? I didn't know what the word hooray, or however it's said, meant and wanted to look it up. But when I was writing this one, the opening was really confusing me so much, that I just got completely overloaded, and discussing this track just turned into this weird nonsense thing, basically. Like, what the heck? To be fair though, you're getting this absurd flurry of notes, almost like Bonvalet is, just attacking the guitar until it produces this strangled assortment, And I like the tempo and pacing of this one, and how so much of the track is just punctuated by that sudden jab before going back to that weird, unusual riff, right, that travels all over the guitar. And it's such a frenzy of a track that goes in so many directions, with this. It's even got this weird bit in the middle, right? Where the drums play this sort of weird, hurried jazz beat while the guitar plays this, this lovely, pattern of notes. Only for it all then to go into one of those weird, offbeat, peculiar time signature movements that's really difficult to wrap your head around. And as a result, this one really confuses me. Like, pretty much halfway through the album as well, a brain like mine's just completely overloaded and confused to the point where, weird stuff happening. Circle back to the name though. Apparently the word hooray, how do you say this word? I don't know. Apparently it means greyish white, so inclined and hooray is in reference to snow-tipped mountains of, I don't know, somewhere in France, right? That's what I would assume. Anyway, that is the discussion of track 7. We are going to go back to past Glumburger, who didn't manage to discuss all the other tracks, but my goodness, what an idiot, man. Move on to track 8. Le feu, le lin et le bouger, or fire, linen and candle. And this one has, for Cheval De Frise, a rather gentle opening, I would say. Though the glide on the guitar, like I think it's playing a chord of some kind, it sounds weirdly atonal, I would say. And then the composition just evolves into, this weird riff that, follows the drum's unusual time signature, with it feeling like it's all going to fall apart and go out of sync with each other. But somehow it never does, instead, the track just travels along to this weird, unusual journey, Once again, I love it when the electric guitar comes in, as it gives the angular edges of the composition an even more angular edge, an even more harsher vibe, and I feel like if I'm going to be overloaded and confused, might as well go all the way with it, I have to say though, on this one, there's a funny bit towards the end where you get this weird sort of flamenco style guitar pattern being played that leads into sort of a chug-chug of the same chord being played as the drums continue underneath it, and it's weirdly funny but also weirdly brilliant at the same time, and I think it's a brilliant way to end the composition, Easily another favourite of mine. Oh goodness, we're gonna butcher the name of this one. We get Les canaux sont ouverts, les moustiques meurent, les moncelets disparaissent. Maybe I didn't do too badly on that. I don't know. Or as it could be translated to, the canals are open, the mosquitoes die, the monster disappears. Which I think is a brilliant name for a track, if that's what it translates to. This, and what I like is how, as a name, it really paints an unusual picture that's kind of oddly funny, In any case, this one, opens up with that lovely flurry of notes, punctuated like the consistent tapping of the cymbal, before it all builds into an even more unusual flurry of notes, that's just all over the guitar, all over it somehow. I find this one so weird though, as there's a section within the first minute or so where the guitar plays this weird selection of notes that's offset by the briefest appearance of fuzzy effects, only for it all then to change into a furious fuzzy distorted guitar as the drum somehow continues that weird consistent tempo of offbeats again. And this one is such a melon twister of a composition to listen to, I feel, but there's something weirdly enjoyable about it as a result, And I think it's a constantly shifting atmosphere and unexpected turns that makes it all just so weirdly exciting, But I love towards the end where it feels like everything is almost random on the guitar, but it's very evident to me that it's all been very carefully considered, that, the notes go from here to here to here to here to here to here, all over the place, but there's an understanding that there's a purpose, if that makes sense. It's purposely done that way, and it makes something that's very, very carefully controlled, but it feels random, and that's weird, I think. Also, I wrote here, apparently there's a brief vocal chant towards the end on this one, I think. I'm not so sure if I think so anyway, and within math rock, I especially instrumental math rock, I love it when, the musicians just, shout something, because it's always really fun, I think. Future Glumburger back again. We did this twice for this review. I recorded the whole thing, and I didn't forget to just talk about track 7, I forgot to talk about track 10 as well. I don't know what this album has done, but I think there's something really weirdly funny about this, so that's why I'm just being upfront and honest about my sheer stupidity, right? Know what I've written as well for the start of this paragraph? Let's keep this moving before I fall apart. Right, future Glumburger here to clean everything up. The next track of Mille Corbettes, which according to Google Translate translates to Mille Corbettes. It's another short one, but even with how short this one still manages to do so much though, right? The drums just seem to glide over every part of the kit, playing everything in perfect sync with the guitars, which, you know, as always, just seems to be exploring every single note possible, you know. Frenzied and offbeat again, but it's, like, as mentioned, it's so fun as a result though, right? And still, incredibly confusing though, and no doubt, as you can see, like with the effect this album's had on me, and just me trying to produce and create this review and how weird everything's gotten, right? Oh goodness, it's no wonder that a brain like mine's completely overloaded by this point. I think, like, I'm just not built for these things. Weirdly enough though, the next track, Durchfreud Harmonium, roughly translates to cold shower harmonium, which I think is the exact thing I need to snap myself back into reality after having my brain completely twisted by this whole album, you know. This one is the shortest track though, and features just Bonvalet noodling away and travelling all over the guitar, it seems, you know. But there's some lovely intonations being produced on the guitar in this one that makes it a lovely track to listen to, of course in its weird way. And of course, by the time you've gotten into it, it's all over. And we've moved directly onto Le Vestibule des Lâches, or the Vestibule of Cowards. A vestibule, an antechamber, hall, or lobby next to an outer door building, apparently. I had to Google the translation because I didn't even know what that word in English meant, but whatever. But one for cowards. No, maybe I'm a coward for always struggling to comprehend math rock, you know, so maybe this is where I need to head. Anyway, this one continues the frenzy though, the flurry, the incredible angular edges, and the constantly shifting patterns, you know, of just whatever they're playing. I like the tempo on this one though. You can sort of start nodding your head along to it, only for it to then explode into a wonderful fuzzy section that you can truly headbang along to for a bit, only for it then to go into a weirder section where if you still try to continue that headbanging, you're just going to break your neck as you just try to work out the pattern essentially. And that's what's amusing and funny about it, I think, though. And genuinely, I find it enjoyable as a result, you know, because you're just like, yeah, and then you're like, oh, wait, what? Oh, it's over here now. But I do love the pacing on this one, and the constantly changing scene as it all progresses. It's weird as heck, but really fun, I would say. And then we get to the next, the last track, actually. I don't know what's that next track, it's the last track. Noblesse de l'échec, or Nobility of Failure 2, a reprise of the earlier track. And this one just seems to do its own thing entirely, and with my understanding of math rock being so rudimentary, I can barely tell if this one's even a reprise of the previous version at all, but that's kind of funny to be fair, isn't it? But I like this one a lot though, like, it seems to offer much more of that fuzzy overdrive guitar that's very satisfying to listen to, of course. And it's such a manic and, you know, to be truthful, rather unhinged track that seems to just go in whatever direction it pleases, regardless of whether we as listeners can keep up, of course. I find, as well, by this point on an album like this, I'm just so overloaded trying to listen to it, that all I can do is just sit back and just let that constantly changing notes of the guitar, the wonderful tempo of the drums that's always moving and shifting and changing, just completely take over and to guide me along onto its weird esoteric journey, essentially. And I don't know what's happening or what has happened even, but I know that I have enjoyed it though. And, you know, sometimes, you know, it's weird, like we don't understand why we've enjoyed something, but we know we have, you know, and I genuinely get this a lot with the math rock scene. And so with that, yeah, we have covered Cheval De Frise's debut album, Cheval De Frise. As mentioned, this album is such a head-scratcher, you know, and it's one that kind of sums up my opinions of the math rock genre, I feel, you know. I don't know what's happening, but I like it. And this one has been of interest to me ever since my bandmate Omar introduced it to me maybe, I want to say like 5 years ago now? I don't even know, to be fair. Anyway, I just love how this album just has this really weird offbeat dirgy experience where the guitars do what they want, the drums do what they want, everything is placed in the wrong spots for a composition, and yet it all joins together so brilliantly that it makes for an exciting rush of an album experience. I think as well, this might be one of the weirdest sounding albums I've heard with in the rap math rock genre. Like, I find it weirdly similar to the likes of Fourth Realm at times, where it's just an overload of stimulus, but really enjoyable, you know? And I like how this album has been produced with just drums and just guitar, and yet it somehow manages to do an incredible amount with, you know, what is actually very little, you know? It's just the two of them, you know, doing their creative chemistry and making something that is so incomprehensible, I feel. And yet, because they're able to play it, I guess it looks easy how they do it, but it clearly isn't, of course, isn't it? But they just do it in a way that just makes it sound like it can be done. I don't know, I'm just so confused by this. Yeah, you know what, we're just going to come to the end of our episode of Weird Music there. You know, like mentioned, this is such a confusing and weird album that I think is perfect for inclusion on the show, and definitely one for fans of the math rock genre to get their head around if you haven't heard of it, I'd say. And to be fair, maybe those of you who understand the math rock genre better than me might be able to get a little bit more out of it, you know? But I do know that as weird and confusing as I find it, I genuinely like this for what it is, you know? There's just something really fun about the whole experience being offered, and I feel like, you know, few albums manage to achieve this, I feel, you know? Weird, quirky, whimsical math rock. What's not to love? So yeah, with that, I would like to thank you for watching today's episode of Weird Music. I wish you all the best, take care, and bye-bye for now. Bye-bye!